Welcome to Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. Today we're talking about farmer-lender mediation and touring an area elevator co-op in Stacyville, Iowa. Lynn Ketelsen weighs in on demands on fall grain storage and transportation. Stay with us. Farm Connections is next.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections, sponsored by Alcorn Clean Fuel, a farmer-owned cooperative in Claremont, Minnesota, produces ethanol, high-protein livestock feed, and corn oil, and beverage-grade carbon dioxide for resale to benefit its members and their communities. Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility, produces 115 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood. Prow Company, a hands-on commercial property leasing company. Leasing commercial properties in Rochester, Minnesota since 1952. Realtors and brokers welcome. Prow Company.
We're in Stacyville, Iowa at the Northern Country Co-op's fertilizer plant. And with me today is Nathan Augustine.
Hey Dan.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming down.
This is an interesting place. What happens here?
There's a lot of things that happen. We're very proud of this facility. It's very new. We've had it for a couple years, and it's been a great asset for both our patrons as well as our cooperative. This facility holds up to 13,000 tons of dry fertilizer that we can bring in during the off-season to store to be ready for either the fall or spring season when we are applying plant food to our patrons' ground.
What was the advantage to the farmers or the owners of the co-op to building this facility?
Again, it's working together to try to use our size and scale with our patrons to purchase better. One of the challenges we had in previous falls with our smaller plants was we would run out of fertilizer or be very limited, and we would have to slow down or stop spreading because we had to wait for product to come in.
Well, it sounds like the plant improved efficiency and safety. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. What used to take 6 to 8 people between 3 plants, we can now do in 2 to 3 people. And it's computer operated. With a few clicks of the button, they can load a tender truck in just a matter of minutes. Everything is, we don't have to go through separate scales. It's all weighed out here in the plant, and they come in, they drop what they need, and they get their information, and they head to the field.
Well, you mentioned tender truck. What is that?
So our tender trucks have multiple compartments on it. So if we're doing a prescription spread, we will load just potash in one bin and phosphorus in another bin and possibly sulfur in a third bin. We have most of our machines have the ability to spread 3 products independently, all variably at the same time. So those trucks will get loaded separately. They'll drive out to the field, and when we get to the machine, they will load the machines. The machine has 3 compartments. They will load each one of them with potash, phosphorus, and sulfur. The applicator will bring up a recommendation on the screen, and then as he drives across the field, the computer will automatically adjust each bin depending on the recommendation at that specific spot of the field.
Well, we talked a little bit about prescription or precision agriculture, and you're certainly part of that. What starts this engagement or journey with the customer or patron or farmer?
So we first start with soil samples when it comes to plant food, and we'll do a lot of that in the summertime and the fall. And that's progressed a lot from 20 years ago. We might have one sample that represents 160 acres or an 80. Now we have a sample that only represents 2.5 acres. And we take that information and we create a series of maps for them, and breaks it apart. We get the soil test results. So instead of having one number for phosphorus and one number for potassium, in this case we've got 100 of them. And then we break down that field to even smaller increments. With that, we take that information. We have various different levels of recommendations we can run depending on the farmer's goals, the rotation he's in, how fast he wants to move or build the soil test, or how he wants to manage that. And with that, we get an application map. And that application map, basically we're reallocating, we're taking that bulk spread of whatever it might be and reallocating where it goes. So the ground that's got high testing, we turn the machine off. We don't over apply on that. And the ground that's low, then we put more on that to help recover the yield that grower is losing in that spot because it has poor fertility.
Well, that's going to save the farmer some money, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In some cases, when we first started, we didn't know how it would affect our fertilizer volumes, and it really didn't change a whole lot. In some cases, it went up because we could be more specific on where we spent our dollars. The farmer has far more control of where his investment is going with this technology, because he can focus on low testing and put a heavier dose on that, but he could say, well, I don't want to spend X amount of dollars per acre, so we could back off on some higher testing, and we can adjust it to every farmer's individual need. It's pretty neat.
Well, your map showed that right near the old livestock facilities where the farmer would spread manure or plant food, as you said, the nutrient level was higher. So would you adjust your application based on that?
Absolutely. Higher test levels have a lower response of a crop response to fertilizer. When you get to a certain point, the farmer isn't going to see a yield benefit. We may do something on some as far as like a crop removal just to maintain a level. Again, that depends on how the farmer wants to run his operation. But generally speaking, once we hit a certain point, we go to a zero application and let Mother Nature draw it down and then we resample every 3, 4, or 5 years to keep an eye on it. And once they come down, then we'll adjust the recommendations again.
Nathan, you mentioned plant removal. What do you mean by that?
So crop removal, plant removal is what that crop will use in that crop season and what we remove from the field. So if we haul corn, grain, and beans to town, there are nutrients in that grain, and that has all been measured. We have results or information from universities that has a number, so many pounds of potassium or phosphorus per bushel. We can use that information to, that's what's coming off of that field. So crop removal would be putting that back on in the form of potash, DAP, MAP. We have various forms of sulfur that we use as far as on the dry side. That's what crop removal amounts to.
Sometimes does it matter whether you remove stover or straw?
Absolutely. If you take off the actual plant, anything you're hauling off that field, especially plant material, also has nutrients in it. So potash and phosphorus it makes a big difference if you're taking that off as well. And we have to figure that in on the recommendations.
Sounds like a very important job. If a consumer or a company is buying grain or product off a farm, they're actually mining our soil, right?
Yes, it is in a way. We are removing nutrients from the soil, and that is, all that comes into our recommendation to try to figure that in. We have growers that also have animals, and they haul manure back to those fields, and then that is also a different form of plant food. It's just not commercialized, and we'll try to also figure that in on our recommendation. If that meets the field's needs, then we don't need to apply any more commercial fertilizer. And if there are some missing, then we will fill in as that crop recommendation calls for it. There's a lot of interest in sustainability in agriculture, and can we continue to do what we're doing long term? How sustainable is the production? And we try to be as efficient as we can. The precision applications make a big difference on that because we can be a lot more precise. And then we try to do our best to utilize whatever resources that grower has. And we have a lot of animals around here, a lot of hogs, so we do our best to utilize that so that we can use that resource to the farmer's best financial as well as economic and environmental benefit.
Well, your background is in agronomy, and that's certainly a wonderful career in agriculture, but you probably hire some other people with skill sets other than agronomy. What are they?
Oh, the co-op's got we cover everything on feed, grain, and agronomy at this location. We've got obviously applicators, we got truck drivers, we have office personnel, accounting. We have an individual that does our IT and precision work. He flies our UAVs or drones. Does several thousand. We did a lot last year, what we had for acres. We have also another individual that coordinates all our soil sampling. Takes that and does the computer processing, prints out the maps and the books for our patrons, and then usually we also get a copy as a seller to reference it.
Mechanics, bookkeepers. Also, you need some people that run the application equipment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've got a shop in another location that we have two full-time mechanics and one part-time. The part-time one's actually an applicator, and then he helps out when he's not spraying or spreading. And they do a lot of repair. That's been another asset. We built that about 5-6 years ago, and that's been very helpful to have a nice facility that we can work on our equipment.
A huge impact on the local economy, both from the jobs, the income tax paid, and of course property taxes on the facility.
Yes, we've invested a lot of money in the past 10 years on building facilities not only like this fertilizer plant, but grain bins, storage buildings, the shop in Rose Creek, and that all comes eventually with higher property taxes with a higher valuation. So yeah, we pay our fair share of property tax, and we're happy to do it because we've got good facilities and we believe in our communities.
Well, thank you for what you do for agriculture and feeding our country.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Nathan. Stay tuned for more Farm Connections. It's a beautiful fall day, and we're going to learn a little bit more about agriculture today. Our guests, on my immediate left, Doc Johnson, far left, Jim Anderson. The topic today is the University of Minnesota Extension's program called Farmer Lender Mediation. So guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Doc, you've been with the Farmer Mediation program for a while. Tell us about that program.
Well, I'd say the background of the program obviously started when there was a farm crisis in the 80s. And it was a legislated program, which simply means it is a mandatory mediation program, and it's designed primarily to help lenders and farmers work out their differences. And I, as a mediator, I would say my main scope is to try to find a plan for the future. That's the background of it. I think what's interesting about it is the fact that we've been able to help a lot of people get through financial crisis.
And you've done well. You've had some success stories. Can you think of, and I know you can't name names because this is a confidential program and you guys do great at that, but can you think of a testimonial of one that really stuck out that worked through the mediation process?
Well, I think one of the things that people understand after we go through the rules under which we operate is that there's a confidentiality clause in there, but it's not what most people think. What it actually is because I'm immune as a mediator from testimony or witness while we're having our sessions, it leaves us with the position that anything that is spoken, any information that's shared, stays within the room. So it gives everybody the opportunity to fully disclose what their financial situation is, and consequently we can discuss all kinds of options. One of the things that Jim and I both do, just because of our experience, we can suggest different options that most people have not thought about simply because we see it over and over and over. So consequently, we kind of open everybody's eyes as to, okay, there are potential solutions to the issues. And once that is out there, then everybody seems to start opening up, start thinking about what their situation is, start thinking about a possible plan for the future, and that's really what the mediation program was designed to do. So I guess after all these years, I feel that I've helped not only farmers, lenders as well, work through some issues that they were not able to do on their own. And I feel good about that. That's what I get out of it. And I'm going to continue to do it until they tell me I can't.
A lot of these cases aren't necessarily production problems, income problems. A lot of these cases can be caused by medical issues. They can be caused by divorces. So the problems don't just stem from agriculture. In every case, it seems like it all boils down to dollars and cents. So what we mainly try and start with is a balance sheet, try and get some decent numbers, and work that into a cash flow, and try to get to a point where things will work or they won't work.
Jim, Doc told us a little bit about his work as a mediator or moderator. Your title is a bit different, financial analyst, and I know you like to soften what that means, but what exactly do you do in this mediation process?
Well, I come out of the FinPAC program. I come out of the university's program that puts together balance sheets and cash flows, and that's probably why I started this in the 80s, as I was working with Merv Freeman out of the district office, and he wanted someone to take the FinPAC into the countryside, and that is a great way to bring the numbers into a balance sheet and then go into a cash flow. If you can come to some real facts, some real numbers that make sense, you can help with a solution.
Well, that's a real service. And of course, farming is difficult, and there's cycles of economics and other things that impact them. And you talked about disease, disability, or medical issues, or commodity prices. Things happen to people. Even good people have challenges.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you two have a system that's helpful for farmers. How do they reach out to you?
Once a creditor is in a position where they cannot collect the debt for whatever reason, or the debt is in default, or whatever the case may be, before that creditor can take any legal action to collect the debt, because it's a mandatory program, they have to offer the debtor mediation. That starts the clock. Okay, so once the debtor decides that he wants to go through mediation, he will make the request, and consequently at that point in time, the date starts at the request, and it runs for 90 days. There's a creditor stay in place. Consequently, it gives us approximately 60 days to bring everybody together and try to find that solution.
So you're actually giving a little bit of peace or time out. Let's work through this, and there's a legislated timeline.
It's a break. The worst thing that'll come out of a mediation is that farmer will get 90 days to just take a deep breath and draw from outside resources. There's the university's program, the mediation program. There's farm advocates who can also help with FinPAC programs, and there are some folks that can help with depression issues, perhaps, or some of those medical kinds of issues.
Personally, I've seen a few farmers, not many, but that have gone through the program, and they're still farming. So it is successful, and what I saw was it did give that time you spoke of, and a calmness and a mediation coming together, and the lenders actually like it, I think, because it offers a forum for discussion.
Yeah, we find that to be true more today than ever, is that they need that break too, because in that collection cycle, it's not fun. I mean, the farmer is caught up in it, the lender's also caught up in it, and consequently they're talking maybe, and that third party influence, when we come to the table with them, we can try to get them on track again and actually have them sit across from the table, so they now have to talk to one another. And it very rarely do we have cases where we have to separate farmer and lender. And in those cases, it's a little bit tougher because we're not at the same table. So let's say the debtor's in one room creditors in the other room. As a mediator, I take solutions back and forth. So I'm traveling between the rooms, but at the same time, they're comfortable in that position, so we can still find a solution.
That's a rare event, though, and successful, but it's a rare event. The one other thing I wanted to say about farmers with struggling. Sometimes there are farmers who, when they get to that point, they have such a hard time even opening their mail. I've had operators that say they walk up to the front door of the bank and they just can't go in.
In farmer-lender mediation, how do you define success?
Success means several different things in mediation. It means a solution to what their current problem is. Maybe that solution is bankruptcy, maybe that solution is liquidation, maybe it's a refinance. There's a lot of outcomes. Some very positive, some not so much, but it's still a solution. That's success as far as I feel the services that we provide. There are so many different kinds of solutions. A lot of times when I get into a mediation, I tell people that, today's going to change your life. This is the beginning of something different for you. It can be very positive, it might be negative, but what we're going to try to do is get you through this so that you walk away feeling okay about what the solution is. What the process does, because it's only a 90-day process, is it gives everybody a sense of urgency that we have to get this resolved.
But it's hard work. It's a difficult time we're dealing with people who are having difficulties. And
It's part of their history, part of their heritage, and I think part of their future.
No.
In that case, success was measured in relief.
Yeah.
We changed something. We don't have to do what we've always done, and you guys have been part of it.
We often say it's time for you to get a good night's sleep again.
Jim, is there a cost for this program to the farmer or to the lender?
Yeah, no, there is no cost. Our services are available at no charge. And one more comment, there's a nationwide group that does this. 40 of the 50 states, I believe, have this same program. Ours is free. A lot of those states are not free.
Wonderful resources. When I think about the years of experience you have and the many examples that you draw on, nowhere else can you get a resource like that. And I'm sure that we can go to the University of Minnesota Extension website and learn more about farmer-lender mediation.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us today, Doc.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Stay tuned for more on Farm Connections.
Even with a record or near record corn and soybean crop coming out of the fields in Minnesota, neither storage or transportation seems to be an issue. While there are bunkers, which is a yearly occurrence, the good news is farmers have been able to concentrate on getting the crop out of the fields. Bob Zelenka is the executive director of the Minnesota Grain and Feed Association.
A lot of bunkers are being filled, a lot of farm storage is filling, so it's been a pretty active few weeks, but we've been handling it pretty well. The efficiency of the elevators has improved, our leg speed has improved, handling grain has gotten better, so far so good with us handling this crop.
On-farm storage has continued to increase in the state.
Well, interestingly, in the last 20 years, been a real substantial growth in on-farm storage to the point where in Minnesota we have about 600 million bushels of commercial storage or elevator storage, but over 2.5 billion bushels of farm storage. It's like 75% of the total storage in Minnesota is on the farm. So it's really important for the producers to manage the quality and quantity when they decide to market that grain and bring it to the elevators.
In general, grain elevators are doing well.
It's going to be millions and millions of bushels going through our elevators this year with the crop that we've seen. It's been statewide pretty good crop. Isolated problems here and there with some hail damage and a little flooding, but all in all, it's been a very good crop. So hard to put a number on it, but it's going to be huge, and I think we're in good shape to handle it as well.
Farmers in Minnesota certainly have had their challenges in the past with both transportation and storage issues. However, this year, good news. Plenty of transportation and plenty of storage, even with bunkers popping up across the Midwest. This is Lynn Ketelsen reporting.
As the harvest season comes to a close, farmers will be working closely with their lenders and their local co-ops to manage resources for the year ahead. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Farm Connections. Until next time, I'm your host, Dan Hoffman.
You can access more information about KSMQ on Facebook and at ksmq.org.